Welcome, Sip&Talkers. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome back to Sip&Talk.
I'm so glad to be here today. And honestly, I am in a fantastic mood.
Oh yeah, it's always a good day in the studio, but you seem extra fired up today.
Well, I mean, the energy is just crazy right now, right? We've got a lot of listeners begging us to touch on the global economy again. And frankly, looking at the world in 2026 it's like reading a Hollywood script that got rejected for being too unrealistic.
It really is. It's a completely bizarre split-screen reality we're living in right now.
Exactly. Like, on one hand, you look at your phone, and the wealth effect is just staggering. The Taiwan index just smashed through the 40,000-point mark. The S&P 500 is hitting all-time highs. I mean, I look at the guy delivering my food, and we both have this mutual young stock god confidence in our eyes.
Right. Everyone feels like a genius in a bull market. But then you swipe over to the international news, and it is sheer geopolitical anxiety. You've got this intense standoff in the Middle East, specifically the Strait of Hormuz. And then over in India, you've got Prime Minister Modi literally telling people to stay home and do online meetings just to save fuel.
Which is wild.
It is. Staying home in your sweatpants isn't about fighting a virus anymore. It's about fighting, like, global energy anemia. So what is actually going on? Is the world running way too hot, or is it freezing cold?
Well, it's actually both at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And that is what we're going to untangle today. What you're describing is a classic case of structural overheating colliding with geopolitical freezing.
Okay, structural overheating versus geopolitical freezing. I like that. Break that down for us.
So on the digital and financial side, you have this massive overheated rush of capital pouring into AI infrastructure. But at the exact same time, in the physical world, your supply chains and energy markets are freezing up due to these incredibly stubborn geopolitical gridlocks.
And if you're a listener sitting there feeling whiplash, like you don't know whether to celebrate your portfolio or panic buy canned goods, you are totally not alone. So let's start with the freeze, the physical world gridlock.
Yeah, let's look at the absolute epicenter of this right now, which is the diplomatic deadlock between the U.S. and Iran. This is basically the root of the current physical freeze.
Right, because the peace talks just completely flatlined.
Completely. And it's important to look at this objectively to understand why. Iran actually came to the table with a fairly significant offer. They proposed transferring their entire stockpile of highly enriched uranium to a third-party country.
Okay, which sounds, that sounds like a decent compromise, right? You take away dangerous stuff and in return you lift the economic sanctions.
Under traditional diplomacy, yeah, that's exactly how it works. But Trump rejected the deal outright. And the logic there is a complete shift in how foreign policy is being handled. The administration isn't looking for a mutual compromise anymore. They want absolute airtight advantage.
Because, wait, let me guess. It's because just moving the uranium doesn't solve the core issue, right? Like, they still have the machines that make it.
Exactly. They still have the centrifuges. They keep the enrichment technology. So, from the U.S. perspective, taking away the current stockpile is just a temporary fix. It's like emptying a bucket of water while the hose is still running. Trump wants a perfect deal that guarantees Iran can never restart the process.
But the problem is, if you walk away from the table, you're leaving Iran backed into a corner. They're not just going to shrug and say, oh, well, we tried.
No, of course not. And they have a massive physical trump card.
The Strait of Hormuz.
Right. They are using their control over that specific choke point as their ultimate leverage. By threatening the shipping lanes there, they introduce massive, unpredictable fluctuations in global oil prices.
And this is where the geopolitical chess game directly hits the everyday person. This is exactly why we're seeing that ripple effect in India that we mentioned earlier.
Yes, the energy crunch.
Right, because an exploding economy like India needs massive amounts of imported energy. When oil prices go haywire because of a standoff in the Middle East, the fiscal pressure on India becomes so crushing that the government has to step in. Hence, Modi telling people to go back to remote work.
It's a perfect example of how fragile the physical supply chain is.
Yeah.
A disagreement in a negotiating room directly forces a software engineer in Mumbai to work from their kitchen table to save gas.
It's insane when you put it like that, but also makes me wonder, how does the rest of the world react to this? Because if you're an ally and you're watching a superpower become this uncompromising and honestly unpredictable.
Oh, you start getting very nervous.
Yeah. Remember when the U.S. suddenly floated the idea of buying Greenland? If you're relying on that kind of foreign policy for your national security, you have to be sweating.
You are. And the reaction to that unpredictability is a concept we're seeing across all the data right now. It's called strategic autonomy.
Strategic autonomy. Okay, so basically hedging your bets.
Precisely. Countries are no longer relying on a single protective umbrella. They are actively diversifying. We're seeing the EU and India signing distinct bilateral trade agreements outside of U.S. influence. Canada is building direct security ties with the EU.
It's like, okay, think about it like banking. Imagine you've been with the same primary bank for 20 years, and suddenly you realize they might just change their rules overnight. You don't just sit there. You go open an account at a local credit union, maybe an international bank, just to make sure you don't have all your eggs in one basket.
That is a great analogy. It's geopolitical risk management. But here is the fascinating and somewhat dark twist to all of this external hedging.
Uh-oh. I feel like there's always a dark twist.
Well, historians and political scientists are pointing out that this external anxiety is paired with a very deep internal anxiety within these democracies. There's this prevailing historical theory right now, and we're just reporting what the analysts are saying here, that modern democracies rarely end through violent coups anymore.
Right, it's not like tanks rolling down the street.
Exactly. The theory is that they are slowly eroded from the inside. Legally elected officials gradually manipulate the system. They tweak the judiciary, they reshape the intelligence sectors, they allow media ownership to consolidate into friendly hands.
Wow, so it's a slow decay.
Right. And when the public is already stressed by inflation, which again is being driven by things like this Strait of Hormuz, they become disillusioned, and that internal erosion just accelerates. There's a huge psychological weight on the global stage right now.
Okay, so that is the freeze. We've got choked supply chains, allies scrambling to open new accounts, so to speak, and citizens terrified that their institutions are rusting from the inside out. It's heavy.
It is very heavy.
Which makes the other side of this 2026 paradox even crazier. Let's pivot to the digital boil, the AI supercycle, because while the physical world is gridlocked, the markets are absolutely exploding.
The numbers are staggering.
Right. I mentioned Taiwan's 42% year-to-date surge. You've got South Korea's KOSPI index surging on memory chip optimism. Even Chinese tech stocks are maintaining this really resilient overweight status.
The capital flowing into tech is historic.
But let me play devil's advocate for our listeners here. Because I lived through the late 90s, isn't this just the dot-com bubble all over again? I mean, are we all going to be left washing dishes in the back room when the music stops?
It's the most common question analysts get right now. But when you dig into the financial data, there is a fundamental difference between today and the year 2000.
Okay, convince me. Because a 42% surge sounds like irrational exuberance.
Well, during the dot-com bubble, valuations were built on clicks, eyeballs, hypothetical future business models. Today, the companies driving this rally, they're AI giants like NVIDIA, TSMC, they are backed by massive tangible cash flows.
Real money.
Yes, real profits. Unbelievable margins. This is not just an IT upgrade. We are in the middle of a 10-year structural revolution. Think about it this way. The last 30 years of tech were all about digitizing data. Taking
physical files and putting them on servers.
Right. The internet, boom. But the next 10 years are about commoditizing intellect.
Commoditizing intellect? That's a wild phrase.
But it's exactly what's happening. We are fundamentally altering human productivity. AI is taking logic, pattern recognition, and problem solving and turning them into a utility that you can just buy.
Okay, but to commoditize intellect, you have to build the physical infrastructure to support it. And that brings us to this crazy new geographic axis. The global semiconductor market is racing toward $1 trillion in revenue. $1 trillion. But basically, all of that power is held by just 4 countries.
The chip-4 monopoly.
Right, and this is so crucial for everyone to understand. These 4 nations control over 90% of the semiconductor value chain.
Which is an unprecedented concentration of power.
So let's break this down for the Sip&Talkers. I like to use the global smartphone analogy to explain the chip-4. Because otherwise it just sounds like a bunch of acronyms.
I love this analogy. Walk us through it.
Okay, so first, you have the United States. They are the architect. Think of them as the operating system. They control the AI chip design, NVIDIA, AMD, and the entire software ecosystem.
And crucially, they control the EDA tools.
EDA, electronic design automation.
Yes. EDA software is essentially the physics-defying blueprint you need to design a chip with billions of microscopic transistors. Without American EDA software, the entire global chip design industry just stops.
Period. Okay, so the U.S. is the architect. But an architect needs someone to actually pour the concrete. That brings us to nation number 2, Taiwan, the foundry.
TSMC.
Exactly. Think of Taiwan as the processor of the smartphone. TSMC produces over 90% of the world's most advanced chips. They are the beating heart of AI computing. And it's not just about having a factory. It's about advanced packaging, specifically CoWoS technology.
Which is absolutely dictating the ceiling of AI development right now.
CoWoS. For anyone who isn't a semiconductor engineer, the best way to understand CoWoS is this. Imagine a city that runs out of land to build houses. You can't spread out anymore. So what do? You build skyscrapers. CoWoS is essentially 3D stacking for chips.
It shrinks the physical distance the data have to travel.
Yes. Less distance means less heat, which means massively faster processing speeds. Without Taiwan's mastery of CoWoS, AI development hits a brick wall. So that's the foundry. Now, nation number 3 is Japan. The enabler.
The hidden champions of the whole system.
Totally. They are the screen and lens materials of our smartphone analogy. Japan holds a 70% market share in the absolutely crucial chemicals and silicon wafers needed to make chips. Companies like Tokyo Electron.
Without Japanese chemicals, which are refined to absurd levels of atomic purity, you literally cannot print the chips.
Exactly. And finally, nation number 4, South Korea. The Vault. They are the hard drive. They control 70% of global DRAM.
And over 80% of HBM, high bandwidth memory.
Right, HBM, which is basically a massive superhighway that feeds data directly into the processor. So South Korea dictates the speed and the capacity of the AI's memory.
So you have the U.S. designing it, Taiwan building it, Japan enabling the materials, and South Korea storing the memory. The architect, the foundry, the enabler, the vault.
It's the chip.
And what's fascinating is how this monopoly is creating an entirely new geopolitical shield. Because defending this tech axis is now a matter of global survival.
Yeah, we're seeing traditional foreign policy get completely bypassed. Look at the recent tri-party agreement, an MOU signed directly between the state of Arizona, the city of Kaohsiung in Taiwan, and Kumamoto in Japan.
It's city diplomacy. Local industrial alliances are stepping up because these specific regions are the physical nodes of the trillion-dollar AI ecosystem.
It's wild. It's like corporate chess. And speaking of corporate chess, the moves happening right now to shake up the supply chain are huge. Intel, for example, is fighting this massive defense battle with their new 18A process.
Right. They really need a win there.
They do. And they just signed a preliminary agreement to manufacture Apple chips, probably the Mac SoCs, which is crazy because Apple has relied almost entirely on TSMC for years.
Well, SoCs, those system-on-a-chip designs, are incredibly complex. Apple trusting Intel's 18A process is a massive signal that the industry wants to hedge its bets. Everyone wants a backup plan.
Exactly. Hedging, just like the countries are doing. And TSMC is making moves too. They are doing a joint venture with Sony in Japan. So you're taking Taiwan's unmatched manufacturing and physically blending it with Japan's absolute dominance in image sensors.
And that specific joint venture is the bridge that connects this whole digital supercycle directly back to the physical world.
How so?
Robot vision. Autonomous driving. We are sitting right on the edge of the next iPhone moment. But instead of a screen in your pocket, it's physical robotics.
Oh man, the Tesla Optimus V3.
Exactly. The engineering validation is already done. And the huge leap here is a massive upgrade to the AI5 chip.
Right, so it's not just a robot arm doing the exact same motion on a car assembly line 1,000 times a day.
No, those older robots were hard-coded. This is completely different. The AI5 chip gives the Optimus V3 real environmental perception and logic. You can put it in a chaotic, unpredictable room, and it will assess the environment and make its own decisions to complete a task.
That is terrifying and amazing. And the timeline is moving fast, right?
Very fast. Small-scale production begins in May, and they are targeting mass production by August.
Wow, and obviously this robotics boom is lifting other sectors too. It's not just the big names.
Right. There are huge secondary beneficiaries, what analysts call the low-key sectors. Think about passive components. Companies like Nichicon in Japan or Vishay in the US, they make the tiny components that manage power on the circuit boards. They are seeing incredibly strong performances.
Because you need millions of those little parts for every robot and server rack.
Exactly. But it's so interesting to compare that hardware boom with what's happening to traditional sectors. Look at healthcare. You have giants like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. They are being forced to aggressively slash the prices of their weight loss drugs in India right now.
Because of generic competition.
Yeah, generic competition and local economic pressure. So while the tech hardware sector has absolute unyielding pricing power globally, the traditional physical world companies are struggling to maintain their margins.
It all comes back to that structural overheating. But look, I have to ask the obvious question. If the Optimus V3 robot is rolling off the line in August, and it can actively perceive its environment, What does this mean for our listeners? Like, what happens when a robot can suddenly handle QA checks or simple assembly?
Well, it means we are facing profound structural shocks in the labor market. We talked earlier about how democracies are facing internal structural anxieties, right?
Yeah, the inside-out erosion.
The labor market is about to experience its own version of that. As these low-barrier, physically repetitive jobs get automated by machines that can literally see and think, it's going to completely upend the job market.
So bringing this all together, it perfectly frames the psychological contradiction of 2026.
It really does.
Because on one hand, people are looking at their retirement accounts and they're thrilled. They are thoroughly enjoying the wealth effect of this tech boom. But at the exact same time, there's this deep, gnawing anxiety about regional conflicts, democratic erosion, and now robots coming for their jobs.
It's cognitive dissonance on a global scale.
Totally. So if you're listening to this, how do you protect yourself in this chaotic web? I mean, we've got a standoff in Iran spiking energy costs in India, which fuels inflation, which tests democratic stability, while a four-nation tech cartel builds artificial brains.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it's today's news.
Exactly. So what's the takeaway? Well, tech is obviously the hard power of this era, but your defense, your personal software update, is independent critical thinking.
Hedging your skills.
Yes. Just like nations are hedging their alliances with strategic autonomy, you have to hedge your skills. Don't rely on a single repetitive capability that an AI-5 chip can learn by next Tuesday. Maintain a clear perspective, because the world is shifting fast.
And honestly, it leaves us with a really provocative thought to ponder.
Hit us with it.
As these robots seamlessly bridge the gap between digital AI and physical labor, and as that chip-for-tech axis becomes practically impenetrable, will the future of human value be entirely decoupled from what we can physically produce?
Oh, wow. Decoupled from physical production.
Yeah. If machines do the physical work and AI handles the intellectual commoditization, it's going to force a total reinvention of what it actually means to work.
That is a massive question to chew on. What does it mean to work in the 2030s? Sip and Talkers, think about that the next time you're looking at your stock portfolio while sitting in traffic.
It's definitely something we'll have to keep tracking.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible conversation today. If you guys have thoughts on this, or if there's any other international topic you want to hear us unpack, please drop a comment or send us an email. We read every single one of them.
We really do. Thanks for spending your time with us today. Keep questioning things, stay rational, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Please remember to subscribe to Sip and Talk wherever you get your audio. And also do us a huge favor and go check out our buddy Mickey's YouTube channel. It's called Mickey to Life. He really puts out amazing videos, so go give him a sub. Thanks again, Sip and Talkers. We'll catch you on the next one.